Hey guys, per usual, everything on this channel is for educational purposes only and is not intended as financial advice. So let's talk charts, let's talk TA, technical analysis. Start with the weekly Bitcoin. And there's a few things I could talk about fundamentally with Bitcoin, transactions, everything else, blah, blah, blah. To me, it doesn't really matter. TA kind of trumps everything anyway for me. And what I'm seeing, again, Adam Eve, this is not new. Many of us have been talking about this for a couple months now, but you got your Adam, you got your Eve. Look at the happy couple. What more could you want? You know, hit a nice little fake out. You can argue whether or not this is an inverted hammer or not on the weekly, whether or not it needs to be at the very tip of the bottom. I don't care, okay? Look, it's good enough for me. You can say, well, then it's not an inverted hammer, and that's fine. Trade it however you want to trade it, but you don't need to argue with me about it. If we're looking at RSI, we hit oversold for the second time ever on the weekly. The first time was when we hit like 200 or something like that. We probably hit it oversold on the weekly, you know, when Bitcoin was like sub 100, when it had some sell-off, but nothing in the modern day era, the live ball era for my baseball viewers out there. So what I think is going to happen is we're going to hit this 4,800 to 5K zone, and you'll hear me say that a few times throughout this video, but that's the target, that's the measured move for the Adam Eve, that's the 1618 for the Adam Eve, that's the previous all-time high, so there's plenty of horizontal resistance there. It's the Tenkin on the weekly, it's the Kijun on the 2-day or 3-day. Anything past 4,800 to 5K will be bonus, add-on, snow day type euphoria. We'll see. I don't know. You know, it depends how it looks when we get there, what type of consolidation we get. If we get a head and shoulders versus a ascending triangle versus a rising wedge versus whatever else, bull flag, you know, who knows? But it's something to keep in mind. I will be closing much of my position, at least 50%, at 4,800 to 5K. Just because there's a ton of resistance there. Everybody sees that. It's no surprise. I don't pay attention to MACD much, so I don't really know what to say other than the lines have crossed and it looks bullish, and the histogram is bullish. But what you really want is the lines above zero. You know, currently they're at like negative 800 or something on the weekly. Just something to keep in the mind, back of your head. Oh, the other thing about RSI, it's probably going to tap the 50 and then get denied when it hits 4,800 to 5K. Just another sanity check when you're looking at oscillators. So here's like my roadmap for the next few months. I'll talk about quarterly shifts as well. So we're coming into Q2, April 1st. Now, any quarterly contract will become a bi-weekly contract, at least on OKCoin and maybe BitMEX. I don't really know how that works. I don't trade there. But so 318 would be like when the quarterly becomes the bi-weekly, when that rollover happens. So we'll get a new quarterly between 318 and 4.1. I can't remember if it's the next week or that on 318. But anyway, the point is, when we see those quarterly changeovers, we typically get a lot of volatility and or buying and or forwardation versus backwardation in futures. So you'll see quarterly way above spot, then bi-weekly slightly above spot, weekly just above spot. You know, that's when we're in a bullish sort of picture. So we had an Adam Eve previously, same zone. It was pretty scrunched, you know, it was very compressed compared to what we have now. We have almost a textbook Adam and Eve now. It's definitely not perfect, but it's good enough for me. It's like arguing with me about an inverted hammer. You know, to me, this looks like an Adam and Eve. Even if it's not and it behaves like one, I don't care. Like, again, it's good enough for me. Descending volume profile, you got your V, you've got your U. We had a really nasty pullback at 4,100. So that's going to be the resistance zone. I mean, it's not rocket science. If we break 4,100, it's game on like Donkey Kong, and we go to 48 to 5K. I have a pitchfork on here. We'll see how well this works, if at all, but it's pointing to the 4,800 to 5K zone in early what is this? Late March? No, let's say mid-April. I don't know, sometime in April. So it'll be into Q2 at that point. The 200 is also here. Another reason that we're not going to just shoot past 4,800. I don't think. You know, the 200 is kind of meaningless throughout most of 2018, but when we're this far below, and when we want to return to it, I think that's going to be a big resistance zone. Like I already said, previous all-time high was 49, 43, somewhere in there, 5K. So depending on how it looks here, then we can start talking about 6K tests. Now, that sounds insane, obviously, but when you look at other assets and compare their chart to where Bitcoin is, you know, a lot of this stuff like Tron and EOS even has sort of reached back to where it broke down. And if Bitcoin does that, it goes to 6K. I don't think that's going to happen, but it's not impossible. Again, it depends how it looks. If we get to 5K and we bullishly consolidate, start doing some markup, I just don't think it's going to be too pretty once we hit 5K. I mean, it might just be like a massive wick with like an $800 wick down. We'll see. Definitely something to watch. I'm leaning bullish heavily, obviously. A lot of that has to do with this edge to edge on the daily. As long as we're above 3,600, I am firmly in the bull camp in the very near term. The target is, again, other edge of the cloud. No surprise. Guess what the number is? 4,800. Not rocket science. All this stuff measures the same thing, just tells you it a little differently. So the cloud is telling you on the daily, on my settings, doubled 2061, 2030, that we're in edge-to-edge active territory, and the target is 4,800. Now, if you're using the doubled cloud, which is fine, the doubled cloud or the single cloud just shows a Kumo breakout instead of an edge-to-edge. One of the main reasons why I like the doubled cloud is because it shows me the exact trade. You know, it shows me to go long. It shows me to get out here. You could have gotten long up in here based on the edge-to-edge, but I've found over the years that the edge-to-edge trades work out best when you wait for the bullish TK cross, which didn't happen until after the pullback. So again, that just tells me the system I have, the signals I'm looking for make sense. They're working. I don't know. We'll see. But the trade is go long, keep adding until we hit 48, and stop loss below cloud around 36. Now, if we drop out of cloud, we get a bearish TK cross. We're going to start testing these lows. You know, then we can talk about 1,500 or whatever the hell people are thinking about. But in the near term, if we're in the cloud, 48 is highly likely. Let's talk a little bit about quarterly stuff. So previously to 2018, I talked a lot about the OK coin, not just me, but a lot of people, the weirdness in the quarterly contracts and how, regardless of volume or impact or global percentage, whatever you want to think of it as, there was this quarterly inversion influx of volume and of price. I don't have it on here, but you can certainly see it pre-2017. You saw it 2015 definitely, 2016 definitely. It's kind of broken down since we've gotten CME futures. Coincidence? I don't know. I'll show that on the next chart. But you can see here are all the new quarterlies. Now visually it looks like, you know, we broke down hard, we went up, we still closed throughout most of 2018 a wash between each quarter. You know, we've basically closed at every open. But on these opens and closes, we've also gotten high volatility. So that's something to keep in mind when we're approaching April again. So let's just look at the CME chart. I think it's more important now that it exists. And again, regardless of percentage of global volume, regardless of how many people are trading there, regardless of the fact that it's a paper market and not a real market, I think enough people pay attention to it that it matters. And we can see that every open that we've had, for the most part, I don't have this one circled, I should, has been a high zone of volatility and or straight up reversal. Now this is probably the least volatile open and close. These are just the not quarterly contracts, but they have like bi-monthly and 6 month and then like half a year contracts. pretty much regardless of what it is, even this one, highly volatile. It's either been high volatility or it's been straight up reversal exactly in those days of open and close. And if you look at the total volume compared to everything else, it's not huge. It's not zero. It's getting bigger. It's growing. We had a massive, massive down day leading into the open. When we had that 41K rejection, 41,000 rejection, 4,100 rejection, that was pre this February 25 contract open. So again, what am I looking at for crazy volatility zones would be their March 29th into April 1st contract, which isn't on here yet, but it will be. And then after that, it's April 26th when that expiration hits. But in the near term, March 29th would be the next day that, if we're popping off, if we're at 4,800 by March 29th, you bet your bottom dollar that I'll be closing a lot of my stuff just simply based on this. It's gotten just denied every single time, almost just about, when these contracts have been opening. Now you could argue that was in a bear market, even up here. That was in a bear market. In a bull market, we might see something different. We might see price exploding. I don't know. We'll see. These legacy guys, they like to think they own the road with their paper market, taming the Bitcoin bulls, whatever. But I'll be watching this definitely going forward. And then lastly for Bitcoin, just looking at indices, comparing correlation. There's really been little to no correlation. From Q3 to Q4 was like a perfect down, and then from Q4 to current, it's just been straight zoom for legacy versus crypto, Bitcoin specifically has just sort of been flat sideways ranging. If you look at this bright green, that's MSCI, which is Emerging Market Index. Based on some people who know more than me, they kind of think of that as the highly correlative crypto market. And you can see, again, there's no correlation here. I don't have the exact statistical values, but just eyeballing it, there's very little going on right now. All right, let's talk about a few other coins on the top 5, whatever: ETH, XRP, LTC, and EOS. The TA for all these, pretty straightforward. ETH hit its edge to edge in a couple days, and that'll happen. When that does happen, we tend to see what we're seeing now, where it's all over the place. Generally, the cloud is a no trade zone, which is what most people think of it as if they don't know about the edge to edge thing. On a single setting, the cloud is certainly a no trade zone for the most part. It's just a zone of high volatility, of trendless, we're figuring it out sort of situation, which is what you're seeing with Ethereum. But it's still got the textbook Adam Eve, crazy denial in the cloud. This will be the first bullish cloud since like May, July 2018. So it's almost been a year of bear cloud, which is extremely bullish if we break above. Whenever you see a long trend come tapering down to an end and it flips, that's game on, man. That's what you're looking for. If you're using a system like this, if you're trend following, you're entering the market on a bull flip. And that's what we may see within the next couple of months here. Now again, this could fall below the cloud with a bearish TK cross and we'll be testing lows. Always a possibility. But you have to assume when we're in the cloud and we're flipping these metrics for the first time in a year, that there's a pretty good chance we're going to start moving up on bullish momentum, and or bears are just exhausted. And if the Adam Eve targets work out, 200 to 250 is basically the zone, and that's the previous consolidation zone. So it's not like a surprise that we're going to stop there and figure out who's alive, who's paying attention. Volume's a little bit of a mess, mainly because of the hard forks. Stop-go sort of situation. But overall, Ethereum looks good for up, just like Bitcoin does. If I have 10 grand and I'm looking at all these charts, not paying attention to the ticker, not paying attention to my Bitcoin maximalism, not paying attention to how much I loathe XRP. If I'm just looking at these in a vacuum, this is the last chart I would enter here for any reason at all. Arguably has a really messy Adam and Eve. I don't have volume on here, but it's not descending. It's just kind of all over the place. XRP will have a decision soon, simply based on the triangulation consolidation, but it's a real mess. The trend just says down. I mean, you can see there's no edge to edge here. It just doesn't look good. It doesn't look like anything I want to touch or thinking about touching, regardless of what it is, the fundamentals of this, the essence that is XRP. Litecoin has been the most bullish, and the chart reflects that. You can see, like I was saying with ETH, and like I said in previous videos, if you're lining up all these charts trend-wise, Bitcoin is the earliest in the pre-bull trend. ETH is somewhere in the middle. Litecoin is the latest. It's got a bullish cloud for the first time since over a year. It's almost got a bullish 5200 cross for the first time since May. These are all signs of bullish momentum. It's got a halving coming up August 7th. You can see it's in this heavy zone of volume congestion. I don't think it breaks 100 by August 7th, which is the halving. I think 100 is a decent area to test. Again, it's previous all-time high consolidation zone. It's a massive psychological resistance zone, which is probably why it sold off the first time. But I don't expect this to just go insane. I was seeing some like 224 targets or something. I mean, that's certainly possible. I'm not going to rule that out. Leading into halving, things might get super interesting, but I don't see this. If Bitcoin starts moving, I don't see Litecoin breaking 100 anytime soon. But it's certainly done pretty well so far. EOS, again, it's ahead of Ethereum based on trend. It's behind LTC based on trend. But you can see once this flips green for the first time since July, it's getting a 5200 cross again for the first time since July. These are all bull things, regardless of what I think of EOS or anything else that's going on. It's also above sort of the previous or in the last line of consolidation before it had its big move up. So surprised that there was an all-time high here. So surprised that there's a local low, and now it's testing that local low again for resistance versus support. No coincidence that it bounced down from the 200. Again, if I'm thinking about Bitcoin and thinking about where that sits in the trend, it's just above the 50. It's likely to hit the 200 and likely to get denied hard, which is another reason why you're closing a lot of your position between 48 and 5K. So for the next couple of months, I do like 555 or like $6. Those like funny numbers, psychological resistance of $6. Tons of volume resistance here as well. I don't expect this. This is like Bitcoin's 4,800 to 5K. It's a heavy volume zone. There's going to be a lot of resistance. A lot of people selling at break even, blah, blah, blah. So I don't expect this to shoot up past 6. Lastly, let me just talk about Zeke, because it's the most depressing thing ever. Again, regardless of what I think about anything, if I'm not looking at the ticker, if I'm looking at this chart, I'm thinking to myself, comparing it to everything else, why in Satoshi's name would I want to enter this for any reason? If you're on a long time horizon and you're DCAing and whatever, great, fine. But there are just better things to buy. You could argue that this was a massive capitulation. You could argue that the 5200 is probably the widest it's ever been on the daily, as in it's signaling overbought or oversold conditions. But I'd argue that this is a descending triangle. It just doesn't look good. If 50 doesn't hold psychological support, it's just going to get real ugly. If I'm wrong, 85 looks good. But otherwise, it just looks like death. And I mean, if you look at the Zeke BTC pair relative value, it's continually pushing all-time lows. And that's not something I want to be buying. It's like if we're pushing all-time highs, you can certainly start shorting. But don't be surprised if you get bulldozed and you just lose that position. Same thing here. If you're starting to margin long, I don't even know where you can, but if you're starting to long Zeke, I just caution that process. Even though it's obviously at all-time lows, and that's certainly better than buying at all-time highs, I just don't see any strength here at all. All right, that's all I have for this one. Like, dislike, comment, share, subscribe. Hit me up on Twitter, and happy trading.